I mean, right now I think that's the biggest fight we can get outside of Joshua Wilder.
Joshua Wilder, yeah. Maybe Canelo in another Triple G rematch.
Which will happen in due time.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah,
Money-wise,
so those are the big
that's
ones.
the biggest
Those
fight,
are the big
but-
ones, yeah. I mean, I think they actually did worse this time than they did last time. I think they did, 1.4 million buys last time, only 1.1 this time or something like that.
Yeah, but they also showed it in a lot of public, like, theaters. They did. That's where I saw the fight.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, they did.
So I don't know how they count those buys because, if you fill up a theater with 100 people,
That's true.
100 less buys.
I was thinking about this the other day. Let me ask you, because, you always hear that MMA is winning. Do you guys see that a lot? I see people in comments, when they're putting negative comments, they always say, this is why MMA is winning.
Well, I mean,
You
I
ever
think
do
on
that?
pay-per-view, it's
Right.
pretty, there's really no room for discussion because McGregor did, 3 or 4 mil?
No, it was, 2.4 million buys?
Okay.
Okay, so
still
2.4,
more than...
which is way more than Triple G and Canelo, but that shattered the UFC record. So the UFC record before that was 1.6 million buys.
Was it Connor's record?
And it was it was McGregor and Nate Diaz. So it shattered the UFC record. Now let's.
But I would say boxing helped McGregor's latest
Sure,
fight though,
sure.
because his
Also-
with Mayweather.
Also, what do you think how many buys did McGregor and Mayweather get? 4.6 million. It basically beat their record by more. When people compare pay-per-view numbers, they do it annually, which is misleading because UFC has more annual pay-per-view shows
than
boxing does, right? We do 2 a year, but the ones that we do Canelo and Triple G would have been the third highest all-time UFC pay-per-view. So I'm not sure why people say
it is
that they're
tough too
winning.
because MMA is still the numbers are still fresh because it's not like MMA's been around since the 80s. UFC 1 was that on pay-per-view?
I don't know how they did it back in the day. I had the tapes, I think.
All those OG
I had the VHS.
UFCs were on pay-per-view.
And I think pay-per-view is what's irrelevant more than anything because outside of your big 2-3 fights a year, you don't have to pay for pay-per-view.
Well, I don't think MMA is winning per se. I just think it's easier to be a fan of MMA. It's easier to follow. But if you look at what's happening with MMA, I don't know why Golden Boy is getting involved, but he's pulling out some old fighters to have their third or fourth match, and then Rampage Jackson just fought Vanderlei Silva for the fourth time, I think, for Bellator.
Yeah.
So you get sometimes you get boxers where the guys in their older age fight each other, the old champions, but I don't know. That's a little bit too obscene for me as far as MMA. I think boxing's coming out on top right now. It's just a little bit difficult to follow because, as you mentioned before, there's so many different fights, so many different promoters, so many different networks, all happening at the same
So many different
same
belts.
day. Yeah.
And
on
the
same
structure of
day.
boxing is so much harder to follow.
Yeah,
where you have
exactly.
to be dedicated. You have to be a big-time
where
boxing fan.
UFC,
to know.
you just focusing on one, and then Bellator as a minor, and then some other minor ones, but.
Yeah, it's just, it's either the UFC on Fox, this is free, and the big, the numbered pay-per-views where they're fighting for one belt, and the mandatories are, there's no, I'm going to skip this mandatory. You have to fight who they tell you to fight.
Yeah.
Or you surrender the belt and someone else fights for
So here's a question for boxing fans and MMA fans, for you guys out there. Why does boxing have to lose for MMA to win and vice versa? Everyone always treats it like one of them has to do good and
It's
the other one
MMA.
has to do
It's
bad.
the MMA fans on the couch
You
that
think-
always talk shit. Dude, MMA is awesome. Fuck boxing. But I say, you know what? That's true.
I'm sure some
think-
boxing dudes are like that too. I'm sure there's boxing people they're
they're
MMA is stupid.
Yeah, why they're humping
the
on
most
the ground,
the
dude.
most prevalent thing I hear is, oh well, boxing's boring, dude. They don't kick each other, they don't
One-trick
slam
ponies.
each other. But MMA is boring too when
Especially
it's
when
a
they're
grappling
just,
match.
Yeah.
So
I just don't know why one has to win, and
I
it
think
doesn't have to be win-lose. It's cool if they both do successfully. They're both fine.
Fighting sports right now is, man, it's hot. Both of them. boxing and MMA. I mean, you're talking about Canelo, Triple G.
See, there we go.
And then Khabib and McGregor. I mean, back to back. That's huge.
I mean, they can coexist because I mean, I feel like inevitably fans of the UFC are fight fans, right? So
there's crossover there.
If there's a big boxing fight, they're probably gonna watch, and vice versa. You know, when Conor fights, like obviously, I'm always gonna watch a Saturday boxing card before UFC. But if there's a big one, I'm gonna watch the UFC. I'm not picking sides.
Yeah.
So, Golden Boy is doing their Tito fight, right?
Yeah.
So, is there boxing on that card? Like, wouldn't that be cool?
I don't know. Local promoters do that a lot.
Yeah.
So you could see at an all-star show, you could see some Muay Thai and some boxing, or there are other shows that do some MMA and some boxing.
I wonder if we'll ever see that at a really, really high level, though.
Well, I mean, it's huge in like Thailand and the Philippines, right? Soren Visai, he just fought on like a hybrid.
He did.
There's Muay Thai, boxing.
Soren Visai's card was a hybridized card.
And I think that's kind of like the standard over there. That's huge. Like, that's how they do it. Roy Jones, he was promoting some of those locally. He was the main event, boxing, and then before that, there was some MMA fights. So, I mean, I think they can coexist, and maybe that's what Golden Boy's trying to do.
Well, I think the demographic is kind of leveled out now because when MMA was first kind of like coming up, the demographic for boxing, I think they weren't interested in MMA at all, and it was mostly, I don't want to say older people, but it was just that demographic that was, that was just into boxing. They didn't understand MMA. Now I think, you've got a lot of MMA practitioners that do boxing, and then I think just the demographic has leveled out and crosses over to both. So that argument is dying a little bit, like with boxing versus MMA. They're both awesome.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I would say.
Big fan of both.
If they weren't both good in their own way, then you wouldn't see Golden Boy venturing into MMA events, and you wouldn't see Dana White and Zuffa Boxing trying to venture into boxing, right? So you have Dana White who's trying to pick up Mikey Garcia and get Zuffa Boxing off the ground and do stuff like that. And you have Oscar De La Hoya, who's now doing MMA events at the Forum in Los Angeles. So
is this going to be a endeavor of his, or is this a one-time like, hey, Tito asked me if I could fight? Like, because
probably depends on how successful it is, right? Like if they experience some success with this event, there's no reason for them not to do another one if they can get the names to do it.
But are they going to sign local guys and have cards? Because I don't know who else is fighting on this
like
card.
Velasco Theater style cards with MMA.
Yeah, I mean you have to have a stable, right? Because you're not because. I don't know, like, is there any other fights on that card? I don't know.
I have no idea. I'm sure there are, of course, but generally speaking, there's a mandated number of rounds. Or at least in boxing. In boxing, there's a mandated number of rounds that have to be on any card, scheduled. It doesn't have to go that many, but there has to be a scheduled number of rounds.
So they're probably local guys then.
Yeah, so it might be local guys or
probably not signed to Golden Boy.
Well, like if Zuffa gets involved, I can't see them. I mean, how many more entities can you fit into boxing? How many more? I mean,
I don't know.
They would have to just maybe manage and then work with some of the other existing promoters.
I don't think it would work. I think they'd be the kid holding his lunch tray, looking for a place to sit in the cafeteria.
Yeah, there's no room.
Yeah.
Well, Zuffa actually kind of wants it that way. And initially, the reports were, I believe there's a quote from Dana White that said that Zuffa would not recognize any existing sanctioning body in boxing.
So are they going to make their own
belts? They would make their own. Yeah, they would make their own in the way that the UFC does. So they would rank their own competitors. They would provide their own belts, and that they don't recognize WBC, WBO.
Well, I just don't think anybody would take them seriously unless they found
depends on who they get, right? So at the time they were targeting Mikey Garcia, right? Because Mikey was an independent, a free agent. So I think their focus was, hey, if we can get Mikey, then we can start something.
Okay, so here's go ahead.
But UFC is known not to really pay their fighters as well as boxers get paid, I think.
Unless your name's Connor.
Yeah, there's very few.
Yeah.
Boxers make a lot more than even the lower level guys make more.
That's true.
Is it? Because I always thought that the argument was that across the board that UFC fighters do better, which means the lowest level fighters in boxing, the guys who are on the local shows here, for instance,
I don't think so.
They're making less than the lowest level fighters in the UFC, but at the highest level, the boxers are making way more than UFC fighters are.
Because I mean, I don't know. I'd have to Google it, but I think guys are getting 50 grand or 30 grand like to fight on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Where, I
co-main
mean,
event.
But that's way more than a boxer on the it depends on where you are on the card, right? Like what's the lowest amount that you'll get paid as a professional boxer, coach?
To start out,
Yeah.
$1,000, $2,000.
Yeah, exactly. It's like $1,000. So like it seems like
I
maybe
feel like
maybe
if you're
2,000.
boxing at that level though.
Yeah.
The comparable, like the MMA equivalent, like you might not be getting.
You're
paid
not in
at
the
all.
UFC.
Yeah, you're definitely not in the UFC.
You're not in the UFC. You're out some other way.
Yeah, well, I think the guys on UFC that are on TV, I mean, they're probably getting paid as low as $5,000, and they're on TV.
Yeah, which is almost criminal. I mean,
I have no idea how much they get paid, to be honest. I just know at the highest level they don't get paid anything near what boxers get
Well, a lot
paid.
of the fighters, I know a lot of the fighters have been complaining over the years that Dana's the only one making all the money, or that UFC's making all the money.
UFC makes the money, yeah.
There's big discrepancies too in like your A side, B side in UFC, because Conor 57 million for Khabib, and Khabib took home what 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think that also
if they let them have it.
But
If
they
they let
work-
him have it, yeah.
the difference is they work for UFC. Like Floyd Mayweather, for instance, does not work for the WBC.
Well, that's
You
why
know what I
Zuffa,
mean?
that's
Like-
why the Zuffa model wouldn't work though. 'Cause
Yeah, like those fighters are actually employed by UFC compared to, and they have contracts to do multiple fights with UFC. Floyd doesn't work for the WBC or the sanctioning body.
Floyd don't work for
So
nobody.
then, I mean, theoretically, okay, they get Mikey Garcia. Who's he gonna fight?
Yeah, because they have to get somebody else, right?
Yeah,
to fight.
and I mean, if they do, then he's not gonna be recognized by any sanctioning body except for Zuffa, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
yeah, I don't. Unless there's something that we don't know.
It was just
I
the
just-
T-shirt that Dana.
Well, it
was
didn't
wearing.
work.
Yeah.
They didn't get him. They weren't able to pick him up anyway. Mikey stayed independent and kind of went his
I
own
think
route.
there's just too much money in boxing